In the academic world, where stress and loneliness often walk hand in hand, my story of closeness and support began in an unexpected way. I am Damien, a 22-year-old law student, living in a rented apartment close to the university with a group of friends. Among them is Alexander, a medical student 1 year my senior, who isn't exactly the most beloved among our cohabitants. Alexander is a perfectionist with an obsession for order, often imposing his rules on cleaning and quiet hours, making him difficult to live with. One evening, in desperate need of assistance with some challenging legal assignments, I approached Alexander for help. Despite his dominating nature, he offered his assistance, much to my surprise. We spent the entire night filling out forms and solving problems until exhaustion overtook me, and I fell asleep. Awakening later, I found myself lying on something incredibly warm and soft. It turned out to be Alexander's stomach. Despite my initial shock and embarrassment, we both discovered that this unintended closeness brought us peace and a sense of safety. From that moment, Alexander and I began to share more than just an apartment. We found mutual support and comfort in each other, spending time talking, cuddling, and sharing physical warmth, which became a solace in our lonely student nights. These sessions of closeness became an important aspect of our lives, allowing us a momentary escape from academic stress and personal anxieties. Over time, our relationship evolved into something more than just cohabitation. We became a source of emotional and physical support for each other, without any sexual undertones. Our unusual closeness sparked curiosity among our friends, but for us, it was a natural and essential part of life. However, the coronavirus pandemic forced Alexander to return to his family home, leaving me alone and longing for our shared moments. Despite our regular video calls and text messages, we both felt a significant absence of the physical closeness that had become so important to us. Struggling with a feeling of emptiness and longing, I began to ponder the nature of our relationship and how we might continue this closeness in the future. As the days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, the separation imposed by the pandemic only deepened my realization of how much Alexander had become a part of my life. Our nightly video calls became the highlight of my day, a digital bridge across the physical divide that separated us. Yet, with each call, the screen felt more like a barrier, a reminder of the warmth and comfort that was just out of reach. The absence of Alexander's presence in the apartment was palpable. Rooms that once buzzed with our conversations and laughter now echoed with silence. I found myself wandering into his room, now empty, as if hoping to find some remnant of the comfort we shared. The bed where we had spent countless hours talking about everything and nothing at all seemed too large and too cold now. Our conversations, though filled with laughter and the usual banter, often veered back to our shared longing for the physical closeness we once took for granted. "Do you remember the night we first fell asleep together?" I asked him during one of our calls, trying to lighten the mood with a memory that, at the time, had been so surprising. Alexander smiled, that warm, reassuring smile that I had come to miss so much. "How could I forget? You were snoring so peacefully on my stomach," he teased, and for a moment, it felt like he was right there with me, not miles away. But as the pandemic persisted, the reality of our situation began to weigh heavily on me. The uncertainty of when we would see each other again, the fear of this invisible virus, and the isolation from the world outside took its toll. Some nights, after ending our calls, the loneliness felt overwhelming, and I found myself sobbing into my pillow, yearning for the reassurance of Alexander's embrace. It was during one of these vulnerable moments that I realized the depth of my feelings for Alexander. What had started as a simple act of seeking comfort had grown into something much more profound. I wondered if he felt the same way, but fear held me back from expressing my true feelings. The thought of jeopardizing our friendship, especially at a time when we couldn't even meet to talk things through properly, was paralyzing. One evening, in a moment of courage, or perhaps desperation, I decided to breach the subject. "Alexander, have you ever thought about us? I mean, what we are to each other?" My heart raced as I awaited his response, fearing I might have crossed an unseen line. There was a pause, a silence that seemed to stretch on forever. Then, Alexander spoke, his voice soft and thoughtful. "Damien, I've thought about it a lot, actually. I miss you, not just because you're my friend, but because you've become so much more to me." His admission took my breath away. It was the moment of truth I had both hoped for and feared. We spent the rest of the call discussing our feelings, our fears, and the possible future that awaited us. It was a conversation filled with vulnerability and hope, a step towards understanding the unique bond we shared. As the pandemic eventually began to recede, and life slowly started to return to some semblance of normalcy, the prospect of reuniting became a tangible reality. The thought of seeing Alexander again, of being able to talk, laugh, and yes, cuddle in person, filled me with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. The day of his return finally arrived, and as I waited for him at the apartment, my heart was a tumult of emotions. When Alexander walked through the door, it was as if no time had passed and an eternity had gone by all at once. We stood there, looking at each other, words unnecessary for the moment. Then, as if drawn by an invisible force, we stepped into each other's arms, the embrace a confirmation of everything we had shared and hoped for. In that hug, all the nights of longing, the tears, and the laughter merged into a single, overwhelming sensation of being home. The days following Alexander's return were a whirlwind of emotions, each moment filled with the unspoken words that lingered between us. Our rekindled closeness brought with it a new layer of intimacy, one that neither of us had dared to fully explore until now. It was during one of those long, languid afternoons, with the golden light of the setting sun streaming through the window, that I decided it was time to reveal the depth of my feelings. Alexander was sitting on the couch, lost in thought, the soft glow of the sunlight accentuating the contours of his face, giving him an ethereal quality. Watching him in that light, I felt a surge of affection so strong that it momentarily took my breath away. It was in that moment, with the daylight fading and the room bathed in the warm hues of twilight, that I found the courage to speak my heart. I moved closer, my heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and fear. Alexander looked up, his gaze meeting mine, and in his eyes, I saw a reflection of my own vulnerability. "Alexander," I began, my voice barely above a whisper, "these past few months have been a journey for both of us. You've become the most important person in my life, and I feel like there's something between us that goes beyond friendship." He listened in silence, his expression attentive, encouraging me to continue. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "I love you, Alexander. Not just as a friend, but something more. I love the warmth of your skin when we're close, the softness of your lips when we talk, and the way your touch makes me feel safe and cherished." Alexander's reaction was a moment of stillness, a breath held in suspension. Then, slowly, he reached out, his hand gently caressing my cheek. The touch was a spark, igniting a warmth that spread through my entire body. His hand was warm, the skin soft yet firm, and the intimacy of that simple gesture spoke volumes. "I felt it too, Damien," he replied, his voice soft with emotion. "I was afraid to admit it, even to myself, but being apart from you made me realize how much you mean to me." He moved closer, his hand still on my cheek, now drawing me towards him. The moment our lips met, it was as if time itself had stilled. The kiss was gentle at first, an exploration, a question asked and answered with each breath. As the kiss deepened, I felt a connection that was profound and all-encompassing, a melding of heart and soul that transcended words. His lips were soft, tender yet insistent, and in that kiss, I found the affirmation of everything I had hoped for. When we finally parted, it was with a sense of wonder, as if we had discovered something precious and rare. We stayed there, holding each other, basking in the glow of our newfound love. The fear and uncertainty that had once held us back had vanished, replaced by a sense of rightness, as if everything in our lives had been leading us to this moment.